Welcome back to the Sports Complex on a Wednesday afternoon. On the show today, we'll get into a little Big 12 basketball. Texas played on Monday, so we don't have much to recap there, but there's other games that happened last night and games happening tonight, so we'll get into that. We'll get into some NBA talk as well. As I want to get into, as we get close to the draft, to the trade deadline, I want to get you a little bit more caught up on what some teams could be doing, and the Texas teams is where we'll be at talking about those. We'll also get in to the new hiring. Another head coach is hired, so leaving only one team without their head coach. Some more Jerry Jones talk, some good news for the Texans, and a little look at some quarterbacks available in the NFL as well. We'll get to all of that and a whole lot more, including your text messages. 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776 is the text line number. You guys drive the show. We just try to keep it on the rails, and what that means is that I try and read everybody's text on the show. I try to get to everybody. If we have time to get to everybody, we try and read all of them. We keep the show rolling right along, and we like to have you guys join in. We'll have the big fat poll of the day that you can join in on. We'll have different questions for you throughout the day, different topics. Anything you want to talk about, though, text it in, and we'll see if we can swerve off and keep the show going wherever you want, because it's all about what you guys want in the end. That's what we're trying to provide for you here on the Sports Complex. It is another great day here for Texas fans, for sports fans on a Wednesday as we're wrapping up, getting closer to the end of football. Basketball is going strong, and I know some of you, it may not be the best news that you're getting back to basketball. Baseball is getting closer. But basketball is in full effect in the Big 12, rolling right along. Last night, we had some games in the Big 12. Big game number 15, Texas Tech, taking on number 25, TCU. TCU gets the win 85-78 in that game. TCU ends up basically being able to do this. This is a matchup for Texas Tech. They needed to get to the free throw line. TCU had committed a lot of fouls. They needed to get turnovers from TCU. Both those things did not happen. They actually flipped a different script. TCU is only 9 turnovers. They end up with 12 offensive rebounds. But the big difference was Texas Tech only got 14 free throws. TCU made 24. They were 24 for 32 from the free throw lane. Were able to keep getting to the free throw line. Texas Tech commits 12 fouls in that game. They shot really well, Texas Tech did, shooting 51% from the field, 50% from three. Wasn't enough, though, because TCU just kept getting to the free throw line and knocks off Texas Tech there 85-78. It is at home, and then we know home court advantage in the Big 12 is a very real thing, which is one of the reasons why people are upset with Texas losing those games at home. However, this is, you got to keep rolling right along. But yeah, it is, every road game in the Big 12 is going to be tough as time keeps going. But Oklahoma had no problems going into Kansas State last night. Number 23 Oklahoma upsets Kansas State, or I guess not upset their rank, but 73-53. Basically, OU played really good defense. This was one of those games where that defense really started off great. OU held Kansas State to 30% from the field, 14% from three. And if you see those numbers, you realize you're probably going to be losing those games. Even at home, K-State just never got it going against Oklahoma, and they lose 73-53. And Oklahoma State rolled into Kansas. Not enough firepower there. They shoot 30% from the field, 27% from three. Meanwhile, Kansas, 57% from the field and 44% from three. KJ Adams goes perfect, 7 for 7 in the game, 16.6 assists as Kansas gets the win they needed. This was a good game for them to bounce back, and those are the games you look at what Texas is going to have to keep dealing with, where when you have those opportunities, which is why West Virginia, why UCF, why those games are so disappointing, because, it is such a gauntlet of ranked teams and really good basketball teams that when you play a still good team but not a great team, you really have to go implement your will and be able to go out there and get a win. They just weren't the right team they needed to be. I think they're getting closer to where they need to be, but those losses are going to loom very large as time rolls on. So We see Kansas gets that win when they need to at home against Oklahoma State team. They get their win. Baylor trying to get a big win tonight. Number 18, Baylor going to UCF. It's another one of those road games and a game where they play two different styles of basketball. UCF is all about defense. Baylor is all about offense. Baylor's offense has struggled the last couple games. They've lost their last 3 games. So we'll see if Baylor can get back on track tonight and get it going against UCF. But that'll be a big game for Texas fans to watch because, you know, you've beaten one of these teams, you lost to the other, so you need to kind of see how this shapes out. You kind of like to see Baylor continue to win, so that quad 1 win and that good win continues to show up. And I think that is Baylor will probably go ahead and win this game. UCF's defense is really good, but I think Baylor, you know, they've been stretching down and that offense seems a little bit more high-powered, and they play good enough defense, and I'm not sure UCF, who has really struggled offensively in a lot of games this year, is going to be able to get it done, but that'll be a fun game to watch tonight. Some NBA talk as well. Go over to the NBA. All 3 NBA teams for this Texas are in action tonight. The Magic are at the Spurs. This is not a great matchup for the Spurs. They've been playing pretty well recently, but this is another young team that is just a couple more years in the rebuild. Kind of like those OK State games where, you know, it may be close, but I don't think for 4 quarters San Antonio may have the depth, especially with Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins both being game-time decisions tonight. I don't know if they're going to have the depth to compete with the Magic team. It will be fun to watch. Some Paolo Banchero versus Wemby. We'll see that matchup. I'm sure some Franz Wagner versus Wemby as well will be another fun matchup to watch. Those young star players that are building up in the league. See them battle against each other. Jeremy Sohan is going to have to bounce back from a pretty bad game the other night against the Wizards to go up against, again, Wagner and Paolo Banchero, who are both really good players. If he can bounce back for that, but not a great chance for the Spurs tonight, just being able to play 4 quarters with a team who's been building a few more years than the Spurs have, who are basically, this is year 1 of the rebuild now that you got Wembanyama. And I know they got Keldon, they got Sohan, and they got Vassell. So there are other pieces there. But the rest of the team, Orlando's a few years ahead of you on all of that. Mavericks are at the Timberwolves tonight. Kyrie and Luka are both out for this game, which should tell you all you need to know about the best team in the West right now, the Minnesota Timberwolves, are one of the best teams in the West. We'll say one of the best records in the West. Kyrie and Luka being out, you know, you'll see the rest of the team try and bounce together. They'll probably hang in through the first half, but once it gets in that fourth quarter, third and fourth quarter, it looks like it'll probably be over for the Timberwolves getting a win there. I know the Spurs just beat the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards, you know, he loses that game, they lose another game, and they comes out and yells about the referees and gets a $40,000 fine today. So I'm sure he's going to want to go out there and show what's up tonight against, you know, not the star players in Kyrie and Luka. And finally, let's get to a little Rockets, because the Rockets are what I want to talk about of the trade deadline. The Pelicans are taking on the Rockets tonight. The Pelicans dropped 2 to the Rockets already this season. Zion's a game-time decision. The Rockets feel like they're heading in a better decision, and that's because Jabari Smith Jr. is back, and while he hasn't been a star, he's been a good player. Alperen Sengun has been pretty much the star player. Fred VanVleet's been okay, but not great so far this season. You know, not necessarily worth the contract they gave him, but a good piece, part of that collective there in Houston. Tari Eason's been good. He's still hurt. I don't believe he will be back for this game. But those are some good players. Jalen Green, though, had been struggling. His name was floating around on those trade blocks. We get into some talk about the Rockets and where they may be headed as we get into some trade talk as the trade deadline looms on February 8th. That the Rockets now, all reports are that Ime Udoka is dead set on we got to make the playoffs. They're 1 game right, or 2 games out, I believe, right now from the play-in. They're the team first out of the play-in. They're 1 spot out of the play-in, we should say. And they have a real shot to at least make the play-in. And if they continue to grow in the second half and stay healthy, that there's a team that could make a run to get into that 9-8 seed range where, you know, you're a little bit safer. And if you get that 8 seed, then you have the advantage in the play-in as well. That's a big difference that you can get into. And that's where Ime Udoka is heading in his first year. He wants to accelerate this rebuild. The Houston staff, because it has been so long, really wants to accelerate this rebuild. But to do that, you're not sure this team is going to be able to do it, so you're going to have to make a trade. And that's where they're starting to look at positions that they may be able to help and who they might ship out in case they are able to get a bigger star. Now, reports are they're not looking at Zach LaVine. And if you're not looking at a guy like Zach LaVine, then that's probably where you're not going to be shipping out your best players to go get somebody. There was conversations today that seems like that the Nets have turned down. That today the Rockets, the reports are that the Rockets were in serious conversations for Mikal Bridges, and the Rockets, of course, still have a lot of Nets picks that they got in that James Harden trade that are very attractive to the Nets to say, we can give you back your picks and you'd be able to go ahead and go, start to rebuild your franchise a little bit better, but we want one of your pieces, and they've asked for probably the biggest piece, which is Mikal Bridges. The Nets have apparently turned that down and said Mikal Bridges is not on the table. I believe him and Nick Claxton would be the two that are not on the table. And then I'm sure they called him and said, well, we'll give you Ben Simmons. Everyone said, no, thank you. But there are some other guys on that team. So I'm sure they will continue the conversations through February 8th of, hey, maybe you call us up, because if you add Mikal Bridges to this lineup where, you put him in and maybe move Jalen Green to the bench, or, you maybe, I don't know if Dylan Brooks would be able to move to the bench and keep his mind right. And he's been playing well enough for them this season. But to add a Mikal Bridges to this lineup that is just a little bit more experienced than some of those other guys, can do everything for you and play that perimeter defense that you really want. Mikal Bridges would be a huge addition to this Rockets team and really seem to boost them into that. They can get into the 8-9 seed range, maybe even the 7 seed if they really, really go for it. But I think that 8-9 seed is a little bit more reasonable. Then you could look, though, and say, well, maybe if we give up one of those picks, is one of those picks worth a Cam Johnson or a Dorian Finney-Smith, where Cam Johnson, where he's a pretty decent defender and hits those threes, was a big part of Phoenix looking good for those years before he gets traded off in the Kevin Durant trade. Do we look at Cam Johnson and maybe give up one of those picks? Not all, not a ton, but one of them. Do you give up for Dorian Finney-Smith, who is playing well for the Mavericks, goes over to the Nets and kind of fits into the same slot there? Do you find a spot for him where he can be one of your top perimeter defenders? And if that's what you're looking for, the Nets are an obvious choice for you to do business with, because you have their picks and they're very eager to get them back. They'd love to make a deal. Unfortunately, the Rockets are kind of holding the chips in this one because they don't have to go all in this season. They don't have to go all in for it, so they're not going to. Another name tied to the Rockets right now is Malcolm Brogdon. He was playing with the Celtics when Ime was up there as their coach. He is in Portland. He is clearly on the trade block as one of the older guys there in Portland. And Malcolm Brogdon is an interesting name to bring in because you have a Fred VanVleet, but you also could use him and keep a field general on the court when you have such a young team, to make sure that you're never playing without that experienced point guard that you trust and can play some defense and can do a lot of things. And he's not the same type of player as Fred VanVleet, so he could use him to change it up. But bringing in another veteran voice into this lineup to try and help out and help this team get a little bit more consistent as you play throughout games, so you don't have a lull where you may give up, a 7-0 run in the second quarter and you end up losing by 4. And if you look back, you can say, well, if we didn't just give up 2 turnovers right there that turned to 2 quick, easy threes, well, we're straight in that game. So Malcolm Brogdon, yet another name to look for in that Rockets trade, in the trade deadline for the Rockets. Someone you could probably get for not too much. They definitely have the draft capital to give up to go get a Malcolm Brogdon if the Rockets want to go after that way. And then there's a bunch of other names. One of the big things they'll address, and probably something they will address, it would be more surprising that they don't do anything than get somebody to be a low-post rim protector, because as good as Alperen Sengun is, one of the reasons he was looked over is he is not a big rim protector. And if you're putting him in that 6'11", 7-foot spot where he's not really fast enough defensively to play the 4, you still want to bring in somebody. So you're kind of thinking, if you get someone who could play a little bit, maybe 4 or a 5, and maybe put him in and stretch a little bit, the rim protectors, there are some rim protectors available. So they could be looking for a Kelly Olynyk, who was played with the Rockets before, could stretch the floor a little bit more for them if they bring him in. Or you go it the other way and you go with a Clint Capella, who had spent time in Houston before. And maybe that's a way you look at. Andre Drummond is apparently on the block in Chicago after getting a little bit better. And I know he feels like he's been around the league forever, but he is somebody that just never got to the level we all thought he could, but he has gotten better and better and better each season. That's another one. And then an interesting one that's not going to help you this season, but if you can get him on the cheap, especially if you throw him in on a Malcolm Brogdon deal, or you try and put him in, a deal with the Trailblazers to bring him in. If you bring in Robert Williams, and maybe that's a deal where you bring in a Malcolm Brogdon and a Robert Williams from Portland and give up some picks, and you don't get him this season, and you try and play out this season, but now you added Malcolm Brogdon this season, and you add a Robert Williams next season, who will be able to come in, and somebody that I feel would play better with Sengun, and the fact that he's just not going to be able to play huge amounts of minutes. We know Robert Williams has never been able to be healthy long term. He's basically taking the year off this year to have the surgeries and get some things fixed to try and help him stay on the court a little bit more. But that's an interesting one, if you want to make a deal with the Trailblazers, that you have some picks to help them expedite their rebuild, and you're trying to expedite, you're in a different spot of your rebuild. You've been going for years. You have the young guys and that you feel are good, and Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore and Sengun and Jabari Smith Jr. And if you're going to keep Jalen Green, those are all guys to look at. And the Jalen Green question, too, is you've had him for a few years now. You know that his contract will come up sooner rather than later. And if you're saying, well, we're not going to pay him near what he wants, like we're not in the ballpark, we can already tell you we've talked to his people, and they want to be closer to a max, and we don't feel he's that player because his numbers are already dipping when we get the new coaching. And now they picked up the last few games. Then you may put him out on the trade block and see if you can get somebody else in there, or try, if you want to, I don't think they're going to go out and get another draft pick for him or something like that, but it's an interesting proposition to see what they could do with the Jalen Green as we get closer, because if you're Houston, you spent a bunch of money on Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet, and while Dillon Brooks is bringing intensity, he's bringing a different, he's bringing a different culture in, helping Ime Udoka establish his. Fred VanVleet, I think, is doing okay, but I don't know if he's been the real spark plug that they hoped he had been. He didn't. It's not the biggest contract in the world, but it's probably bigger than he'd like to have. Now, on the last couple years of it, it'll be a little bit better because we know the NBA, the salary cap keeps rising. But for the Rockets, you're in a good spot right now if you're a Rockets fan, that this team has some good young talent on it. They're not necessarily superstars, but that's also, a lot of people are saying that, a lot of guys are actually looking at a lot of these players, like a Tari Eason or a Jabari Smith Jr., and they really want to go after them. Apparently, Tari Eason and Jabari Smith Jr. are off the board. But Rockets ownership and Rockets general managers and Ime Udoka and people around the league kind of feel like, well, the Rockets just killed these rookies. They gave them no progression over the last couple of years. And so that's the reason why they're underperforming, is because it was just such a bad place for young players to be the last couple of years, that now they're starting to get there, and you're basically resetting the clock on a lot of these guys, which unfortunately doesn't work with contracts. But around the league, the other people are looking at those guys and saying, well, if they came in here, we could get them to the next level. Just a lot of interesting stuff to look for. In the next week, we'll give you some Spurs looks and Mavs looks, and hopefully there will be some more fun trades for us to talk about as well. But that was a little look at the Rockets, because they are an interesting team right now at the trade deadline, a team that we didn't necessarily think was going to be a play-in team. And Ime Udoka has stated he wants to take them to the playoffs. So if you're a Rockets fan, this is a fun time to watch, to see if they make a big move and really try to shake things up and bring in some help to make this a Rockets team they feel can compete in a playoff series. That's really what you're looking to do, and start to give these young guys experience, because, again, as you say, they're so behind the eight ball with the progression of these players. If you could get a Jabari Smith Jr. and a Jalen Green and a Sengun and Tari Eason and Cam Whitmore, so a playoff game or 2 or 3 or 4, and even if you lose in your first round, if you make it in the first round and you make it past the play into the first round, just that experience of being in a playoff game and understanding, the preparations and all of those pieces that go into being in a playoff, and the pressure behind it and the intensity in a playoff game, all of that is a huge addition and a huge plus in developing your players. So I can see why Ime Udoka wants to get there, because he wants to show them, hey, we want to play with playoff intensity for 82 games in the regular season, but none of you know what playoff intensity is. So how can I tell you we want you to play with playoff intensity when that is a foreign term to you guys? Jabari Smith can say, well, I played a couple of tournament games at Auburn. Jalen Green played in the G League, so he doesn't. I mean, you're not going to talk high school as the same as NBA playoffs as type of pressure because you're not on national television with cameras in your face and having to do interviews before and after and all that mental part of the game that you have to get more used to. So I think it's an interesting cause, and I think it's a good idea. I think Udoka is got, he's looked like he's been the right guy so far there in Houston. But a little recap there. And, I say we got a couple texts. We'll get to those in a minute. 512-447-3776. I figure we may get some others because I'm going to rile you guys up with this one. But this is just because we have the haters on the text line. We have the haters going there. So this is what this poll is for you, the haters. This one's for you. Big Fat Poll of the Day.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the Day on the Horn.
Big Fat Poll of the Day today, 512-447-3776 is the text line. We've gone back and forth with the haters and people who are realists and people who are positive about Texas basketball, but then there's always going to be people that if Texas basketball does not go undefeated and win every game by triple digits, then whatever that coach is probably shouldn't have been allowed to ever even touch a basketball in his life. And I know that's not what they think, but that's what they text in. And that's the stuff that they're garbage and they're worst and it's just nonsense. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a rational statement. I'm going to give you the opportunity to make a rational statement when I ask you the poll of the day, who do you want to be the head coach of Texas basketball next year? Now, when I say that, I don't want you to say Bobby Knight. I don't want you to say something that is impossible to happen. I don't want you to say, well, you know what I like? I'd like to go get the best coach in college basketball because he ain't coming to Texas. He's going to stay where he's at. You're not getting Hubert Davis. Mike Krzyzewski ain't coming over. Roy Williams ain't coming over. Bill Self is not leaving Kansas to go to the SEC with Texas. You can't go with those names. Scott Drew's not leaving Baylor. So I need you to give me a realistic name of someone who's on coaching a team that may want to go and come to Texas. Send me that name. If you think Rodney Terry was such a bad hire, was one of, which I've read on the text line, one of the worst hires or the worst hire that Chris Del Conte has made, is what I've read on the text line. I do not agree with that. And I couldn't tell you who the worst is right now. I think he's done a good job. But I'm not going to put him that Rodney Terry. What a mistake. That's all silliness to me. So I'm giving you the chance, haters. This is your chance. Give me reality in this. Give me a real thing, or we just know that you guys don't have any conversation. You don't know what you're talking about in basketball because you don't know another coach that it could be. So you have to go prove it to me, guys. And if you guys want to say Rodney Terry, say Rodney Terry. If you guys are rational and you say, yeah, you shouldn't hire a coach and then fire him the next year because roster management is weird and he lost one to Ron Holland to the G League, and that was supposed to be a pivotal part of your team. And then also you've got top recruits coming in next season. You don't want to lose those. It'll be a new team next season. We'll see what Rodney Terry can do. And he's just went to overtime with the number 4 team in the country. And I know you don't want to lose at home. And I know you want to be in that conversation for number 4, but you're not there right now. And you still took them to overtime. If you want to be in the Rationals group, then we can say Rodney Terry. And that's all you got to just say. Rodney Terry, of course, it's the guy. And you text in your reasons. But I want you to text in coaches that you legitimately think, no, this coach, that's the guy we should go after. Text that in. That's poll day. 512-447-3776. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back, play some sound from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B, talking about the Dallas Cowboys and all the fun that is happening behind the scenes there in Dallas. We'll get to that when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the sports complex here on the Horn, playing Grammy Award winners with double-digit Grammy wins all week as we get ready for the Grammys on the weekend. And so we had to play Quincy Jones. He is up there with, I think, over 20 Grammys. Somewhere a lot of Grammys for Quincy Jones as the producer and orchestral and then his own. So we were playing some Quincy Jones because we're playing Grammy winners with double-digit wins all week as the musical theme of the week here on the sports complex. Of course, I mean, I know I'm making everybody put that in their head and thinking about Austin Powers too, I'm sure. But some good music there. Text line's open 512-447-3776. Big fat poll of the day. Who do you think should be the Texas men's basketball coach next season? And you got to give me a real answer. You know, I think it's Rodney Terry. I think that answer's easy. But some of you guys out there don't think he should coach you don't think he should coach Saturday. Some people think, why? He shouldn't have been hired. We should get rid of him immediately. We should stop the season down. Shouldn't play basketball anymore until we get a real coach in there. That's what some of you guys think, apparently, on the text line. I'm not that crazy, but you guys are. So, I'm giving you a chance. I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourselves and prove yourselves that you got real good and you got a real great name of, man, this guy, and this is the reason, and I'll tell you why he should be great. So I'm expecting to see some of those there on the text line because you guys seem to be sure about it. You seem to know a lot. 512-447-3776. I'm going to play this sound from Hook 'em Up and the Rod B. It's a replay here on the sports complex. Talking a little Cowboys and NFL here on a Hook 'em Up replay on the sports complex.
All right, couple of topics here. Shout out to my man CB at Chris GB 002,000. Always doing a great job as kind of an unofficial producer. We've talked about the Cowboys culture right now and how toxic it seems, fan base in disbelief. And the players' families coming out and speaking publicly about some of the issues the Cowboys have. Remember we talked about Dak Prescott's brother, who tweeted out after the loss to the Packers, Cowboys fans, why continue to DM me? Now, this is in regards to other stuff. This is rumors about the internet. So he's not talking directly about the game. He's talking about the rumors and all the talk about Dak Prescott and how limited he is. And Dak Prescott's and, he's a guy that can't win the big game and he doesn't have the clutch gene, all that kind of stuff. And Cowboys fans obviously reach out to him. And his statement via Twitter was, Cowboys fans, why continue to DM me? Trust me, if I could get Dak to leave Dallas, I would. I, too, want him out of Dallas. The city and organization have been great to he and our family, but done with drama and the so-called fans. But he loves this team and wants to bring it rings. That was Dak Prescott after the game. And then remember Terrence Parsons, Micah Parsons' brother, he quote tweeted a Pro Football Focus article, and that was talking about the highest graded defenders from the weekend, that wild card weekend, and they mentioned Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner as the highest graded defenders from that game. And his quote tweet was, this is why Micah at linebacker, first and second down, with the option to rush the passer is what we will always need, and we pay him what he's worth regardless because we want to win championships. He also went on to say that I can't wait because y'all are really clueless out here. Laugh my blank off. The greatest crimes to this man, talking about his brother, is being done by his own organization. Y'all gonna miss him when he gone. I don't even know why he's talking about Micah Parsons potentially being gone. And then remember that was CeeDee Lamb's mom who went on Facebook to say in all caps, Dak isn't it. And in addition to that, she said they need to get rid of his blank. It's guys on that team that wants a ring. They work too hard. And that's family. That's family members of very notable players. That's some of your best players. CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Dak Prescott, adding to the toxicity. Well, now apparently there's another family member that's decided to step up. Shots my man CB.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, Micah Parsons' mama.
No.
Yeah, Micah's mama's in it now. Micah has not responded to the Jesse Holley comments. We talked about the Jesse Holley comments. If you haven't heard them, just to summarize them, essentially, he said, Micah Parsons, to me, this is just me, is probably the most selfish player on this football team. One of the reasons why Micah Parsons does not want to play linebacker, it's too much of a responsibility. And he also went on to say that he doesn't study as much as he should. He criticized him for not cultivating camaraderie amongst the teams, and he doesn't have players over to his house. Very specific things that, trust me, as a former player, it's okay to critique and criticize, but unless you got firsthand knowledge or unless that is coming from a source you truly trust, the call is coming from inside the house kind of thing, then you can't just go on, national media, national TV, or go on a public platform and dog a player to that extent. You can hint around it when you got, ideas and sources about what's going on. But unless you have direct knowledge, to get that specific is dangerous, which means I think he had direct knowledge, because Jesse Holley actually does really good work, and usually he's not going to throw something out there just willy-nilly, frivolously just throwing it out there unless he's got something to back it up. So here's what Micah Parsons' mom had to say in response to Jesse Holley's comments. She went on social media and said, this take is funny how someone can assume something about someone they never talked with. Michael wants to play DN and linebacker. How often has he said he wanted to be, quote, the chess piece? He doesn't know we have the D-line over for dinner, and the chef cooks help build camaraderie in the defense. They do a D-line dinner every Thursday. How many times have they shown him on the sidelines assisting other players, or they went to the boxing gym together? He even recruited other D-line players to train with him this offseason to help them improve as a unit. He watches film, and do people realize as players they have to be at practice and meetings for 10 plus hours most days? The only day they have off is Tuesday. He doesn't see the sacrifice treatments and therapy he does when he gets off work and try and keep his body healthy and regroup from getting banged up. How many times he got hurt and went back out to play? He could have stayed out. He went back in to try to get a win for his team. Micah doesn't like losing. He's angry after a loss. He's angry when he feels he could have played or done better. That's not a selfish player. Yes, he wants to be the best at what he does, make it to the Hall of Fame or win Defensive Player of the Year. Is it a crime to want to achieve great things in life? You want someone on your team who wants to go to win a Super Bowl. He's manifesting, speaking about all those things all the time he desires as a Cowboy. So, Jesse, before you talk badly about someone, sit down with them and ask those questions before you assume. That's Micah's mama. And by the way, that was put out there. I believe Terrence Parsons is the one that tweeted out his mom's message. So his brother is the one that, Terrence Parsons Jr., he said, when my mom's got to come in and say something, that's how you know y'all dead wrong, in all caps, and an emoji. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I mean, as I stewed on that conversation we had yesterday about Jesse Holley and those comments, I mean, they were so pointed and so specific, which I guess would mean pointed. But at the same time, if you're Jesse Holley and you're rising in that career, that's dangerous. You're going to ruffle the wrong feathers unless you have it on great authority. Mm-hmm. And unless it was like you I don't know, we're opinion makers. That's what we do. I've done it for a long time in this market. You have to, take the good with the bad. You got to make comments about football coaches and basketball coaches, and then you got to see them and cover them, and this is how that goes. That's just the way of this industry. You got to be critical, right? You got to call it like you see it, or else you're not going to last for long. But in Dallas, where the Cowboys are king, no matter what the Rangers do or the Mavericks do, and you're Jesse Holley, who played on that team, I mean, you're calling out the best piece of the team.
Yep. In
real specific manner.
Yep.
And there's got to be a motive to it, I guess is the point. There's got to be – you don't just do that because you woke up on the day you're doing your podcast and you want to talk about Micah Parsons. This was – I don't say is choreographed the word, or is –
He went on for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, it was
alone.
There's a reason for it. And so we've speculated maybe it came from someone within the organization that wants that message out there. Because Jesse Holley knew he was going to light a fire here.
He's a former player. He knows that. He knows what this is going to. He knows it's going viral. That we're all going to be talking about this across the country.
Yeah. Well, and here's the problem. Well, for him, if he's what he's doing, podcasts and media, well, he's going to be persona non grata, not just with Micah Parsons, for that whole locker room.
Exactly.
So and
he knows that.
Yeah, well, okay. So he's excommunicating himself from the locker room in real time to achieve what?
I think to get a message out there that maybe someone on the inside wants out there, and it's someone high up, because like you said, why risk your credibility with the guys and risk your standing with the players with this message? Because you know what I mean? Because I don't know if obviously no players are going to be on your side with this message. To me, that would be coming from either front office or coaching.
Oh, for sure. But the question is, if I'm Jesse Holley and I'm no longer a player and I'm in media now, I got to be careful here, because you want me to say what? Well, I don't want to do that. Use somebody else to be your vehicle, because what am I getting out of this? What do I have?
Exactly. He's gonna get. There's a quid pro quo coming.
Okay.
I'll get my exactly. This is what this is.
No, I get
you
it.
know this
Well,
business is how it works. He's like, well,
that's
now,
what I'm wondering
Yeah.
is what is the
This is theory, by the way, folks. This is a theory by us. We don't have sources on this. This is
but
me
what
working on a
is
theory.
what is he going to get out of this? That's that's my question. All right, what if he is doing this and putting out the code red for the organization?
We'll get insider info from now on from that person. Like, hey man, well, you can always call me. I got your back. You need inside info on this? I'm your call. You got a true insider now. And which he already did, but I think most of his insiders were players. I think most of his information came from players, and maybe it won't come from players anymore, at least not from this locker room.
That's what I'm thinking. And that's because as someone who does this and you're trying to weigh, okay, am I ready to burn this bridge to gain this bridge?
Exactly.
Because that's big, right? If you're no longer liked from the player side.
From Micah's going to be there for 10 years. 10 years.
Yes. And he will forever hate you.
Yeah.
For whatever the reason. Is that worth it? I don't know. That's a scale thing. I was like, okay, yes, I now have the ultimate insider inside to bring the scoop, but I would have tried to leave that to someone in the media.
Yeah, and say it does. Say our conspiracy theory doesn't apply at all. Let's say it's not, the calls are not coming from inside the house. This is Jesse Holly acting alone and going rogue. Then what's the motivation to be, like you said, to be so pointed, to be so specific, and for the critique to be so harsh. It's a harsh critique. He knows how to soften it. We all know how to soften it. You can soften it. You've had things that you've been told that I can say it this way or I can soften it. I'm going to soften the edge on this thing a little bit. He could have softened the edge and said exactly what he said. As Craig Way once told me, it ain't what you say, it's how you say it. He could have said it a certain way. He did not. He said, selfish player. He went out of his way to say he does not have players over to his house to cultivate camaraderie. Doesn't study. These are, come on, man.
He's in it for Micah.
Right. You could have phrased that a different way. He did not. He chose. And Chess House trust me, he's very articulate. He chose those words carefully.
Yeah, because the next steps. I mean, Micah Parsons is going to have his mom jumping onto his brother's Twitter account to refute it, to protect her baby. And I would guess the next phase will be there's someone from the Cowboys who will come out and refute that and say,
yeah,
oh, that's not true. No, we support Micah 100%. Well, so now with who's your consumer? The people who listen to your podcast. Well, now you're screwed with both of them. Because the organization's saying you're dead wrong, Jesse. The players say you're dead wrong. His mama says you're dead wrong. Well, what are you right about? And then you have to come back with, okay, here's why I'm saying this.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what's your proof? I mean, what's your evidence? Because to your point of softening it, it could have been, hey, I wish Micah would study a little more.
Yeah.
I wish Micah was a little more of a team guy and would have some people over. Those are just suggestions. As a former player, it would have been nice. He's going to have to be the leader of this team, tip of the spear.
Talk about your experience.
Yes. Yeah. No, he wasn't. That's when I heard it yesterday and thinking, whoa, there is an ends to a means here. But then I started thinking, what is the end?
I don't know either.
What is the reason?
It feels like kind of everything coming out of the Cowboys organization right now, there's all mixed messaging. None of it makes sense. You're trying to piecemeal it all together. It doesn't have really any, I don't know, it doesn't have any consistency to it, to what's coming out.
Because you can't burn your source, but at the same time, you've now burned the locker room and your coverage of your ability to be in that locker room. Because I would think, and then knowing how this industry works, Rod, and you're the former player, I'm the radio guy, his best relationship should be with the players.
It is.
Because when people
I think so.
Yeah, right. When people tune in to hear his show or whatever he does, they want to hear the player perspective and what are the players talking about. And, it's almost like it's really weird. That's a really weird. And Jesse Holly's a very liked guy.
He's great.
Yeah.
I love his analysis. I listen to it all the time.
Yeah.
I still do. But that shocked me. And I wonder what the motivation, what's the motive there for him?
Yeah, what's the carrot for him to do that?
It's
is
something.
The question.
It's something out there. He just hadn't picked it up.
And I also would ask him, is that worth it? Like, because you're going to lose a lot here. As far as access to that locker room, access to players. You want guys to come on your show.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to give you information where you need it. Going after, is it right to go after the lion of the locker room? I mean, the lion of the prairie?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know.
Got his own podcast and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That is such an intriguing. This Cowboys thing. It's almost like it's shaken. There was such anticipation that this was the year they finally, won the division, 2 home playoff games. Now we got Jerry Jones out sending mixed messages all over the place.
Hanging around the rim.
Hanging around the rim. Jerry Jones said yesterday. Good stuff there from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rod Bay. And I will point out, just to be devil's advocate for Smalley, that there was the point that they was like, well, he doesn't want to be a linebacker. And then the statement by the mom, she's like, well, he's the D-line over, and he works out with the D-line. He hangs out with the D-line. Like, well, I'm guessing all this stuff came from a linebacker then who's like, I need help in the run game. And this dude is just running after the quarterback on a pass play, on a run play. But I'm not, I still think Micah Parsons is a pretty good player. I would not call him selfish or any of that. That's not what I'm calling him. I would say that we're going to get to the text line. And we'll get to that when we come back. Big fat poll today. Who do you want to be Texas basketball's coach next season? If you hate Rodney Terry that much, give me a real name. Or you can just say Rodney Terry and be with the rational people. But if you want to be a hater, I need a real name of somebody you can hire as a real coach. 512-447-3776. We'll get to those texts when we come back here on the Sports Complex and the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn. Playing Grammy winners, Adele with a whole bunch, over double-digit Grammy winners all week in honor of the Grammys this weekend. Let's get to the text line, 512-447-3776. I'm guessing we've got a few coming up here. Let's see. Texter says, I think Clint Capella is the answer. I don't think if you were able to get him at the right price, I think he could be good. I'm curious how he fits in the lineup with Şengün. I don't know, if he gets that three-point shot going, then yes, he's definitely a great player you can stick in there. But again, that changes your lineup because if you're playing Capella and Şengün, then do you put Jabari Smith on the bench or do you move him down to a small forward or do you try and put him in that second lineup and try and stretch it out? It's an interesting because they want to go after it, but I just don't know if Şengün is your guy who's going on the inside. I think they're just not sure that Şengün's style of play right now is necessarily the way to win long term. If he doesn't start passing the ball a little bit more, he is a pretty dominant, ball dominant guy. Once he gets it, he does not have a lot of assists, but he's a really good player. So the question is, if you get him, how much does that shake up your lineup going in? I think they're going to get somebody like that, and Clint Capella could be the right answer, but I'm not sure. Also says Cam Whitmore's emergence is making it tough on Jalen too. Guy is right on his heels and has been electric in limited minutes. There's some CP53. Yeah, I mean, you won't have the problem of having too many guys. The real problem with Jalen Green is that he was shooting and that was it. He wasn't trying to rebound. He wasn't playing really a lot of defense. He wasn't getting assists. And if you're not doing anything else and you just want to take shots, then no one on the team is going to try and get you the ball. And it just spiraled and went downhill. He's picked up on everything else now a little bit more in the last few weeks. And as long as he keeps picking up on everything else, the game will become a lot easier in him. Dexter says, in Rod we trust for Rodney Terry. Arborhorn 81 says, Rodney, stand with Rodney. I like that one. Chan says, I'm okay with RT, willing to write it through and give him the time. Chan, appreciate that. The rational people. Nate Oates, Alabama coach would be my choice, but I'll give RT a chance. And another choice, Chris Johns, current head coach at Mississippi State. I don't think Nate Oates is necessarily the bigger guy. I think that's, he may be able to do a little bit more. He was also pretty toxic when coming off of this season that I don't think you want to go from Chris Beard to him if you're Texas and you're in the main spotlight. If you're in Alabama, it's a little bit easier to get away with. But once you put him at Texas and you're in the main spotlight, you got to remember, the whole horns down thing should tell you how much of a spotlight Texas is in. That something that dumb, that shouldn't be a conversation, is a national conversation that I'm not going there. And I know once we're going to the SEC, it may change, but I don't know if I can tell you that Mississippi State, Chris Johns, is not the recruiter that Rodney Terry is. So coach-wise, maybe a little bit better, but not necessarily there. Tex says, just want to start off your show right. Don't forget Rodney Terry's a spare, and don't get butthurt, Patrick. I was just messing with you. Look, I wrote the poll today before you sent that in. I'm just telling you because we deal with this every day. And the reality is, what I'm asking this question for is because I know a lot of people, and this is not a shot at anybody, watch the Texas Longhorns men play basketball, and they don't watch a lot of other college basketball. And that's not a bad thing. I get it. It's hard to watch college basketball sometimes on teams you don't care about, especially if it's not a great matchup, and then you get into the styles of basketball and depending on which conference it is. So I'm not mad at anybody for not doing that. But I think if you're going to judge a coach based solely on, well, we're not winning games, and we're only watching this very small window of the game, that's why I want you to go, no, give me the other coaches. So I appreciate the person who says Nate Oates would be your choice, and you'd still give Rodney the one. That's a real discussion. I mean, I wouldn't have made the move last year for sure. I would have taken the coach that went to the Elite Eight with Rodney Terry. I would have taken that one. But that's – and I know you guys will not give him credit for the Elite Eight. I don't know why some people won't. It doesn't make sense to me. It's a gap in logic. Let's see. Lorenzo says, I truly believe we need to give Coach Terry a chance to prove his capabilities. He hasn't even had a full season to recruit or coach. With that being said, if we had to get another coach after this season, then why not go for Bruce Pearl from Auburn? He's been in the SEC long enough to know what it takes to get a job done, and he's done it with them in just a few years. Been there, says a lot. Bruce Pearl's a good coach. I'm not sure he would leave right now, and he may, and you'd have to give him a ton of money. And once again, that's, you're giving a lot of money away, and this is Texas fans will always be like, we'll spend $200 million. Who cares? There is money you have to go get. Bruce Pearl's a guy, though, that I'm sure a lot of people would like. Again, it's not necessarily who I would who I would go with, but I think that's a reasonable choice. That's a reasonable choice that Bruce Pearl. Now, he is not consistently really great. You're going to have to deal with down years with Bruce Pearl too, and he is a lot, but he is a good coach. He is a good coach. I'll give you that. Avery Johnson, at least he could handle kids putting the horns down, Sybil, not cry like oversensitive Swifty. Okay? There's so much in that. First of all, Rodney Terry didn't cry. He told them not to do it to players' faces. That part of context gets left out every single time. Hey, don't point. Like, it would be the same thing if Texas players went and just pointed in other people's faces or did the horns up into other people's faces. If you're doing it on the court, fine. If you go into the handshake line and do it, you shouldn't do it in the handshake line. That was the problem. It's been addressed. I know people get all upset about it. It's not a big story to Texas fans. I can tell you Rodney Terry's moved on. Everybody else has moved on. And the Swifty thing, I get it. I get it. If you want to pretend that everybody now is, and like I don't know any Taylor Swift songs, by the way. I don't care. I just genuinely don't care. Just genuinely don't care. Can Chris Beard come back? No, you cannot do the things he did or was accused of doing and reported of doing and be the head coach at a program where, again, somebody getting mad at another player for putting the horns down, and then the BYU took the shirts off, and it's a national story. Like, you're in a spotlight at Texas. At Ole Miss, you're not in a spotlight. Because the reality is, no one on the East or the West Coast or North America hates Ole Miss. But you know where they hate it? In the East and West Coast and in the North? Texas, for no reason. But they hate them. They hate Texas because they ain't Texas. So they hate Texas. And so everyone's going to post about it because either they love Texas or they hate Texas, or maybe they know one fan and that fan's annoying. So they hate Texas now, or they love Texas because they love Kevin Durant. And there's people that love and hate Texas all across the country, and it's always going to be a national story. So to have people on there, you can't do what he did. Also, I mean, he's a good coach, but again, we can debate whether Rodney Terry is a great coach, and we'll see more of that as we go. The fact is, to see him take a team to the Elite Eight, then have some struggles in his second season, which is his first full season, and immediately go, what a terrible coach. What a horrible guy. I hope they fire him before the weekend. That is what's boggling my mind, because it's not a basketball move. It has nothing to do with basketball at that point. But that's just my opinion. We're going to get more texts. I see more coming in. I want to keep hearing from you. I'll keep talking to you. I'll keep trying to figure out where you're coming from, because I'm not sure I see it, but I'll keep trying to figure it out. We got to take a quick break. We'll come back, get to more of those texts, get some NFL talk here on the Sports Complex in hour 2, right here on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 of the Sports Complex here on the Horn. We're going to get into some NFL talk here, getting into the new hire for the Seahawks. Jerry Jones makes a statement again just to try and keep his name in the media because that's what Jerry Jones does. Some good news for the Texans. And we may, if we got time, we'll get into some QBs. We'll get into some talk about some QBs. We may push that to tomorrow. We'll figure out. It's a little bit more evergreen. So we'll figure out how much time we got when we get through all our discussions. And you guys on the text line, 512-447-3776. We were talking some Cowboys playing that clip from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B. If you got some opinions about the Cowboys, send those in. We're talking some basketball, some NBA, and the Rockets and the trade deadline. If you got any opinions about that, you can send that in, 512-447-3776. Or big fat poll of the day, just trying to be peaceful. I'm trying to, and I get worked up. But that's why I'm supposed to get worked up, right? Supposed to get worked up. The poll of the day: Who do you want to be the head coach of Texas for men's basketball next season? And if you I want a real answer, real answers, logistical. We've got Bruce Pearl was a realistic answer that makes sense, and I get it. And they still said Rodney Terry, but they said Bruce Pearl. I'm fine with that. Nate Oates was a realistic. Probably that you say, okay, maybe he wanted to leave Alabama. Maybe he thinks he can recruit better at Texas. Maybe, once we get in, and maybe those people, now they'd have to stay in the conference. Both those guys are SEC guys, so they know the SEC. So there's an edge there, but they also have to then play against their teams. They may want to move to a different conference, but they're logistic. I'll give you the texters on those. Those are legit answers. I agree that Rodney should be the coach. I think Rodney Terry should still be the coach next season, but I get this, and I want to get to this one text, and we'll get to NFL in just a second. So we'll get to NFL talk in just 1 second, but it's really good. I like the first part of this text a lot. The second part we can get into, but from Dave Ram, the first part, how many years do you give RT? Very good question on that. How many years do you give RT? And the reality is, if you want to say best case scenario, you're going to say first year, because you either say the first year was his and he took him to the Elite Eight, and you give him credit for that, or you say his first year was this season, and then you probably give him 2 more seasons. And I'll say 2 more for this reason too. I think next season is going to be a big adjustment because basically you're losing all but 35 minutes of your team most likely, and possibly more than that if Shedrick is not there either. Then, you could basically be returning playing time right now, Kendall Weaver, next season. That's a real possibility. So when you look at it that way, and I know Zarek Onyema could be coming back too, I think, but he's not playing a ton of minutes either. So if we're saying what actual playing time is basically Kendall Weaver, there is a lot of young guys. We'll see Chris Johnson more next year, and we'll see good young players that come in and the freshmen, and we'll get our new transfers in and build. But I think it'll be a younger team next year. So I'd say, how can you build that younger team? Give him 2 years with those guys. Because even if Trey decides to play 1 year and be a one and done, and there was a guy that came and made a visit the other day from Senegal, if he comes in and he's a one and done, then you can still rebuild and bring in some transfers to fill those holes with bringing up some of the younger guys that are part of your core of your team. But to restart a new core, I give them 2 more years after that. So I'd say the end of the season and 2 more after this one, and then you can look down the line and say, okay, we're not making the tournament. We've fallen further back than further forward. Then yeah, you have to have those conversations and you have to get into it. But I like that part of the question. The second part is, you are wild. It's okay to be critical of RT. Just admit he's not the right fit for Texas. CDC was forced to hire him because of the bad optics it would have shown if he didn't. You can call me a hater, but that's not the case. I saw it with Shaka early on, and Texas kept him too long as well. Okay. He wasn't forced to hire him. He did hire him. And he was forced at the end of the day because he went to the Elite Eight, a thing that Texas doesn't do very often. He took him there with a team that was underperforming with Chris Beard, and he took him to the Elite Eight. And so he did that. And so you give him all the credit. And he also has the recruits, and he recruits really well, and all the players were behind him. So yes, you get him in there. I will not admit that he was just the wrong fit. I will say he is open for criticism, and I've criticized him plenty on this show. And I'll continue to criticize him, but I'm going to defend him when the criticism goes from criticism to insults. I will defend him. But a criticism is, hey, I don't know if that lipstick goes with your face or it goes with your complexion. I don't know if that lipstick. Well, an insult is, well, you're ugly. And that's what the two sides were on. If you want to say what I've said, that I think the strength and conditioning needs to keep getting figured out, and they need to figure out the minutes because their players seem to be getting more and more tired, and they've done better at that. in the last few weeks, but their players were getting very tired and missing a lot of shots at the end of games. You have to figure out your rotation and that to get those. We said he needed to change his rotation because it was not working with two bigs in there and Brock Cunningham. He fixed that one, but that was a criticism. We went and we told him that. We've said that he needs to get his defense to play better. We've said he needs to get his offense to move without the ball more. These are all criticisms of things he needs to do. We criticized him for he should not. It was a bad look and not the right thing to do with the horns down. All of those things are criticisms, and all of them we said. But to say, nah, I've watched him. I've seen 12 games now. We're good. He's the worst. That's crazy. I like, because this is the same thing with people who Sark year one said Sark is the worst coach. We shouldn't have him. He's a bad coach and we do a bad hire. Sark's a bad hire. What a bad hire Sark is. Just look at him. Just look at him. He's bad. And you didn't look at the positives with the negatives and say, oh, he's growing. He's getting better. And now he takes you to a college football playoff. And now he's a much better coach. Now some people still hate him. Some people think it was a bad hire and you should have got Nick Saban even though he wasn't coming. But at the end of the day, there's a line between these. And to just say he was a bad hire because we're not the number 15 team in the country right now, we're number 10 team in the country right now, after losing a lot of players after an Elite Eight run, it doesn't make sense in my head that somebody else was going to come in and completely rebuild our roster with what, Hunter Dickinson's in Kansas. They're not doing great with him. Like, there wasn't a great amount of transfer portal guys that you were going to be able to go get. There wasn't, freshmen that were going to be coming in, that were going to be impact freshmen, that were going to decommit to come to Texas. That wasn't going to happen. So you had to go with what you got, and they were able to pull that stuff. Again, we can put in the fact that the G League is now an issue, and Ron Holland went to the G League, is something that threw off what this team was going to do. And if we're going to criticize, Rodney Terry as well, then we got to talk about Chris Ogden. He's the general manager. Chris Ogden is the one who helped build this roster construction. And I like Chris Ogden too. I think he's doing a good job. I think that there was other circumstances that made this season a little bit harder from where you're going to be. I don't think the season's over for them by a long shot. They got a lot of work to do, but they can get there just like they did last season. That's just my take. But I like the question there, Dave Ram. How many years do you give him? And I'm fine with that. I like that question because that is a real question. And it's not we give him as long as we gave Shaka. I think Shaka just every once in a while kept it pushing, and every year that his contracts were coming up and those things, there wasn't that other coach that you could really go get without spending $20 million on a guess that this guy may work out. And I don't think they ever wanted to do that. Let's talk some NFL, though. I just wanted to get that one because I did think the first question was really good, Dave Ram, of the how many years again. I like that. We'll come back. We'll get into more talk. Keep texting in 512-447-3776. We'll get to those in the next segment. I do want to hit some NFL, though, real quick, just to hit through these because the big story of the day was the Seahawks have hired Mike Macdonald, the 36-year-old defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He is the new head coach of the Seahawks. He is continuing a youth movement in hiring coaches where it seems more and more teams are shying away a little bit more from necessarily hiring the old guard and more experienced coaches. They may be bringing in some younger guys. I know Todd Bowles is a 60-year-old, and Raheem Morris, I believe, is in his mid-late 40s. But I can tell you that there's 7 coaches under 40. So 7 coaches under 40, 7 coaches in their 30s. Now 7 head coaches in the NFL are in their 30s. If you want to go 45 and under, that's 16 coaches that are 45 and over. And we're at 10 right now that are over 50. So the rest of your league, other than those 10 coaches, are under 50. That's a shift of, what the reality of the NFL used to be, that coaches stuck around longer. Coaches, once they were tenured, got stuck around. We know Andy Reid right now is your oldest coach at 65 years old. Once Bill Belichick was out this year, you have your oldest coaches. So it's a new movement that a lot of people are trying to go with younger because they want fresher ideas. They want to have new ideas and fresh ideas. They want to have a better connection to the players. They're trying to get away more from that old school style of coaching where it is much more boot camp and much more disciplinarian. They want to have a little bit more of a friendly feel. And I think that's not only for the players, because it's easier to get players to come in, and when they're talking to players at exit meetings and when they're talking to players when they're trying to sign free agents or make trades or any of that, I think it's part of that. And it's part for the staff and the ownership, that the ownership walks in and they get told to go away. This is how we're doing it. They want to work with somebody that's trying to create a more positive atmosphere, which I get if you're a billionaire and this is your plaything and you want to win, but that is where more coaches are going. And we see the success with Andy Reid, and Andy Reid is part of that, where he is an old school coach, but he is also more in the positive. You saw Pete Carroll. I know he got, he was told to move up and move to the administration this year, but he was part of the more positive. They'll run you hard, but it's going to be with a smile on their face, not a frown. That's more where they're going. Mike Macdonald was the Ravens DC for the last couple of seasons. He was with Michigan for a year before that with Jim Harbaugh in 2021, then went back to Ravens. Before that, he was with the Ravens from 2014 to 2020 as well, as a DB coach, a linebackers coach, a defensive assistant. Started as like an intern, I believe, at Baltimore, trying to get a job in there and just move up. It has now moved up to be a head coach for Mike Macdonald. It's not a bad hire. It is interesting they're keeping it defensive. We'll get into this more when we get to quarterbacks probably tomorrow, that they now have to make a decision who they're going to hire offensively. Are they going to keep their offensive coordinator? Are they moving a different direction offensively? Is that one of the reasons you bring in another defensive coach? Or does he have somebody else that he wants to bring in with a different mindset? Those will be the questions in Seattle, because you have a Geno Smith question. Is that your guy? Or are you going to try and move forward? Are you going to move on to your next quarterback? Are you going to draft somebody else? Are you going to use another quarterback that you got on the roster? What are you going to do at quarterback for Seattle? That is a question there. But a decent hire. I don't think he's necessarily the greatest coach that you could have gotten in this circle. But for the Seahawks, a good hire to get Mike McDonald, to get him over there. It's going to be confusing with the coach in Miami now as well. Also, we get the good news in Houston that Bobby Slowick gets a new deal. The offensive coordinator for the Texans gets a new deal, give him more money, a little bit, probably better title or something like that. But basically, he was sought after by the Commanders and by the Seahawks as well. His name was in a lot of coaching searches. They understood that. I think he understood, too, that in today's world, you probably don't get the run, even though you get a 5-6 year contract. Mike Macdonald gets a 6-year contract. You still realize you can be fired in 2 years pretty easily if you don't produce. So, maybe take another year, try and build up with C.J. Stroud, but that for the Texans and the continuity of that offense, helping that offensive line try and build that run game a little bit more that was getting better as the season went on with Singletary. If they can continue to build that and teach the offensive line how to do it, find the right running back to put in that system to pair with Singletary, and then C.J. Stroud, if you can continue his growth, Nico Collins' growth, when you get Tank Dell back, his growth, if you go out and get another wide receiver, make that offense really spectacular. He's probably going to be gone next year or the year after, but you at least get another year of Bobby Slowick. So a really good news for the Texans there. And Jerry Jones couldn't keep his nose out of the news. Jerry Jones comes back and says there's no doubt in the future he could work with Bill Belichick. So after he gives all the praise to Mike McCarthy and he's right around the rim and the 12-win seasons and all of that, he immediately comes back and says, yeah, but I could see myself working with Bill Belichick. Of course, anything's possible. Who knows? Maybe we'll fire Dan Quinn next season and try and bring him as a DC, or maybe we'll fire Mike McCarthy and bring him in. And by the way, it would be the best odd couple. Like, I don't know if there's a better odd couple in sports, like that pairing of Jerry Jones and Bill Belichick. It feels like the actual odd couple, right? That those two guys, it's that Jerry Jones has just got clothes on the floor and Bill Belichick is trying to, get him to clean them up. It just feels like there would be a line at the Dallas Cowboys. They'd put tape down and they go, Jerry doesn't walk past this line. This is Bill Belichick's area. It just feels, I kind of want it for that, just to watch the show, to the fact that you get coaches post-game press conferences where he'd say 6 words and then Jerry would say 6,000. Kind of want it for that. But Jerry Jones, of course, needling the coach right after giving him the pat on the back. Hey, you know what, Mike McCarthy, we're keeping you. We believe in you. We think it's the best thing to keep you. Also, we may have your next coach right behind him. We may go get this guy too. Who knows? We'll go get him. I'm sure all the defensive players would not be thrilled about that news, to be bringing in Bill Belichick. But you know, if you're going to win, you're going to win. But if you're going to make him work really hard and then still not produce, that might be the problem. All right. Let's take a quick break because I want to get back to the text line. I see you guys got some more in there for me. So I want to get back to that. So why don't we take a quick break and we'll come back, get back to the text line. Big fat poll of the day today. Who do you want to be the head coach of Texas basketball next season? You can say RT. You can say Rodney Terry. Sure. You want him to be there. Or if you got to, but I want a realistic answer. Bruce Pearl was realistic. Nate Oates was realistic. Avery Johnson was not realistic. That one wasn't real. He couldn't recruit here. He wasn't great at Alabama either. And I love AJ. I'm a big fan of the Little General. I'm a Spurs fan. I love AJ. But that is not the guy. Like Royale Ivy's a better option. If you want to say Royale Ivy and try him out, I don't know what he could do recruiting-wise. You'd have to get a lot of other help to recruit-wise. But that's okay. You can say, I think, we should have given Royale Ivy a shot. I think they should have interviewed him at least. If they didn't, I think that you should have done. But let me know. It's on the text line, 512-447-3776. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get those answers and start getting your text right here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn, playing those double-digit Grammy winners like you two. And I also wanted to get Uno Dos Tres Catorce stuck in everybody's head for the rest of the day. So you're all welcome for that one, to get this song stuck in your head. Just thought I'd throw that back to you. If you thought, oh, I haven't heard that song in 15 years for a reason. There you go. There you go. That's my gift to you guys. Right there to get you stuck there. Text line's open 512-447-3776. 512-447-3776. Talking Chris Beard. Talking Rodney Terry. Sorry, just saw that name on the text line. Talking Rodney Terry, talking Cowboys, talking whatever you guys want to talk about in the text line. Texter says, it just seems to me that the Cowboys were hurting for linebackers in the game, and you've got several defensive ends that can play. Why would you not make Parsons play linebacker in that situation? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, Micah Parsons doesn't want to. Two, he's not really that good in the run game. So he was in a linebacker. He was much more in the pass game kind of linebacker, and he wanted to rush him in the linebacker spot. So it didn't really necessarily make it a ton of sense to piss him off. And that's, I think, where the criticism was. Well, he doesn't want to be a linebacker, but he keeps wanting to pretend that he's a linebacker. But he really only wants to play defensive end because that pays better. That gets more glory. You can be in that Bosa conversation and TJ Watt conversation, and you can go get the sacks and go get the money and get the fame, and you can help your team win, but it's a lot more fun. It's like when you're playing Madden. Do you ever play as the linebacker, if not blitz, and just play run coverage as a linebacker? Is that really what you play if you're Madden? No. You know, it's like playing wide receiver at Madden, and you don't call for the ball. Just keep running your routes all game and see how mad you get before playing it. So I get it. I get why you want to, but I think there is criticism that can be dealt to him with still saying that he's the best defensive player on the team. I think both can be true for that. But yeah, I don't think they moved him back for a plethora of reasons. Is they did not move him back. But again, that goes more to the Jerry Jones. Why did you not try and go out and get a linebacker? I know you had DeMarvion Overshawn get hurt. I know there are cap limitations. I get all those things, but when Van Der Esch went down, you should have tried a little bit harder to bring somebody in. Texter first text into Jerry wants to hang around the rim of the glory. I can't say all this on the radio. Killing me, guys. You're killing me. We get a thumbs up there from a texter. Appreciate that. Freak Nasty ATX says RT is the man. He's here to coach for Texas like Whittington plays for Texas. Great show, Patrick. Appreciate that, Freak Nasty. Appreciate that. And I think he is. I think he does genuinely really love coaching at Texas. He really is a fan of it. And I know that a problem that some people have with him is he's not, as outgoing. He's not the guy that goes out and, is doing the campfire talks or doing the things where he's really showing his love for Texas. But it's there. It's definitely there. And so you see it and it brings it out with the players and how they find their love for the game. So it says Bruce Pearl is also shady as well. We would have to think twice before we do that. Yeah, and there is off the court stuff with Bruce Pearl that when you get to Texas would come up. I think it's a little bit closer to being possible, but again, very good point. That yes, he is. There are some stuff off the court with him, and then you have to fall into. And if you come to Texas, they will get you more to, hey man, there's ways we have of how we do things behind the scenes, and I'm sure they'll get you set up with how that works. And you don't want to go off too far from that. Dexter says it's a result of the instant gratification millennials. I don't want to go off on the rant about how people are using generations to get on people. There's bad people in the world and there's good people, and unfortunately there's a lot more bad people than good people. So you just try and be a good person. But I've met people of all different ages that are terrible, terrible people, and it never really meant it was never about the generation. I met people that sit on their phone all day in their 60s, and I met people that sit all day on their phone on their 10s, in the 20s, and I met people that love TikTok and want to be a TikTok star of all ages. I've met people who are really good people and want to work hard and want to push of all ages too. I'm not buying into it. I know you can just throw general hate in areas. I'm not that guy. So just me, but I won't go too far in that rant because we don't have the 7 hours it's going to take for me to calm down after that. Texter says maybe Bill O'Brien will be available after he gets fired from his latest OC job. Don't threaten anybody with Bill O'Brien. Don't threaten that. It's hilarious that he's Ohio State, that they're all pumped for him at Ohio State. That's crazy. I know they got a lot of players back, and they're feeling good. They're going to have a lot of fun watching that offense. You know, I'm not the biggest Ryan Day fan, but I'll take Ryan Day over Bill O'Brien. Text says, they said Shaka was bad, but he wins at VCU and Marquette. We gave him the right time to build his team, and it didn't work out. UT is not for every coach, but if he turned down a job with Kelvin Sampson, shows that RT wants to be here and take on the job, moving the pressure. Texas fans should support him and give him a chance. She's half a season and they're calling for his head. Yeah. Also, let's put down, Kelvin Sampson did turn down Texas. He said he re-signed with Houston, wanted to stay there. And look, Shaka did win in other places because, again, there are people that are not a fit because they can't recruit Texas well. And there's people that are not a fit because they don't want to go do the off the court stuff of, like, I know there was one point where I saw Shaka before a game and he was not in a great mood because there was some formal event or something, and it was like 2 hours before tip off, and they were like, "Oh no, you're right. You need to be there." And he's like, "I have to get ready for a game, and you guys are, you guys want to fire me because I'm not doing enough, and then also I have to go like be over here for a picture opportunity 2 hours before the game." So there is that part of it, which is hard, that you just have to learn how to deal with it. Texas, and like Mac Brown is the best guy at it. Sark's been done really well at it. And that's what we'll see as Rodney Terry continues to grow in that role. But again, growing in the role, that's what you want. We watch in the NFL. What are they doing? Hiring young coaches that are continuing to grow and get better. If you look over at in the ACC right now, at Duke and UNC, that huge matchup coming up on Saturday, both those coaches are newer head coaches. They've been around. Hubert Davis been around, and he has struggled a bit, and now that team's number 3 in the country. You kind of have to roll with these guys. You can't just go, nah, I didn't see it in the first 6 games. I know what's up. That's more my issue with everybody that's coming out with that. Appreciate that. Bevo, JK says, Patrick, stop making excuses for RT. Look how many teams make turnarounds quickly. If other coaches are able to make quick turnarounds, then we should be able to do the same. The lack of improvement of this team is a major red flag. I'm not sure RT is the coach we hoped he would be. Again, we are halfway through a season. We're not even halfway through Big 12 play. We haven't even played everybody. And we're saying, red flags everywhere. No, the team is not. But the team is not, because we're playing really tough teams. And their talent, it just isn't really there. That we don't have the right mix of players. That, we've talked about it. We've talked about it a few times. Roster management. It just, unfortunately, a guy like IT Horton that you hoped was going to come in and do big. IT Horton is not being the player that you need him to be. He's a graduate student. He was supposed to come in and be a 3-point ace. He's like getting 3 points a game. You were expecting 9 out of him, 12, especially in the starting lineup. And you're getting 3. That's a big problem. You were expecting Dylan Mitchell's 3-point shot to come along. It didn't come along this offseason. That's a problem. Brock Cunningham's having probably his worst season in 2 or 3 seasons this year. That's a problem. Dylan DeSue's still playing well. Max Asmus hasn't figured out how to play fully in the Big 12 yet. You have 2 undersized guards. These are all problems that you're going to have in the Big 12, and you knew some of them going in, and you're trying to find ways around them. But if we want to say we're not making excuses, this is why we say there's not a difference. If you want to criticize RT, I'm fine with it. If you want to text in and go, hey, I don't like this particular thing, I'm fine with it. But to say he's bad, he lost games, and we're looking at wins and wins and losses, that's not criticism. It's just jumping to conclusions. And if you watch college basketball over the years, this happens to most programs. We're not Kansas. We're not UNC. We're not Duke. We're not going to be that program that already has these people that grew up watching and really want to be Texas players. People grow up that are basketball players. They want to play at Kansas. They want to play at UNC because of those players. They want to play at Duke. They want to play at a lot of different schools in the Big Ten that I can't think of in the Big East. They want to play those. UConn. They want to play because those, the history of those teams. Texas doesn't have that, so you have to find guys that you're trying to get. Texas isn't the most fertile recruiting ground for a lot of great players. You have to keep going out of the state, which is something that's harder to do. But if you don't want to look at any of that and just assume anyone can walk in that door and do better than Rick Barnes and do better than Chris Beard and do better than Shaka Smart, then I don't know what to tell you what the last 30 years is of Texas basketball. But not everyone can just walk in and make this program all of a sudden a top 5 perennial program. It's just not that way overnight. And I think getting a young coach who wants to be here in the long term, who isn't going to leave to take a better job, I think that's a better solution. And try and work with him and grow with him than to try and go out and get a big name that would gladly walk away from Texas to go to the NBA or gladly walk away from Texas to go coach at a bigger school or a bigger basketball school. And I know the money's there, but those other schools can match the money. Kansas can match our money in basketball. And people would rather go to Kansas because there's just more history there. And it's easier to recruit. Switzer also won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys. Was he a great NFL coach? And if Terry can't win at home, he'll be gone. That's just the way it is. Texas didn't build a nice new arena showcasing losing. I agree he needs to win at home. We all agree he needs to win at home. But the line keeps being, well, he's lost some games in his second year, first full year. What a bad coach. Barry Switzer, we knew over the time. The problem with Barry Switzer, it wasn't he was bad. No one thought Barry Switzer was a bad coach when he was winning Super Bowls. They thought he was a bad coach afterwards when he could not continue the success. And you're going to say, well, he had half a year. I don't think that's a real analogy. Chris Beard, again, cannot do it. You're under too much of a microscope at Texas. We talked about it earlier. You're way too much of a microscope to be a head coach again here. He was a nice guy. I liked hanging out. I liked talking to him. He was a really nice guy. He's got Ole Miss. They're doing okay. He was never going to recruit you the top athlete in the draft. He was never going to do that because of his coaching style. I liked him. I didn't ever think he was going to necessarily get us to the place we needed to go, and I don't know if RT is either. But I think that RT can grow into that position much better. Eric Musselman. Eric Musselman is another one. Also, we got, let's see. We got, hey, Patrick, isn't Auburn's head coach perceived sleazy and dirty like he was busted for at Tennessee? Texas stays far away from those type of guys. Yes, they do. I agree. No, I'm with you on that. I think he's getting a little bit further away from it at Auburn. But yes, there is all of that. And Eric Musselman is 1-6 at Arkansas in the SEC play this year. 1-6. Just again, to throw out a name that was one of the top coaches that Texas was looking at to replace Chris Beard and replace Rodney Terry at the end of the season. Eric Musselman is 1-6 at Arkansas in play. And part of that might have been that he thought he was getting another coaching job and bailing out and didn't care about the program, and he would have bailed on Texas too. But maybe he'll be here in a couple of years. Who knows? But he's 1-6 right now, so we can't talk about him like he's walking on water. Texas says 2 more years is rough. I don't see it getting any better, so we'll see. As for Ogden, that dude is a hothead drunkard. I was in school with him, and he was a player, and would have been on 6th Street with him, and had mutual friends, and it never failed. That dude tried to start a fight with nobodies every damn time. That's all allegedly, and we'll say allegedly as I say this on the radio. Look, I think Chris Ogden's come a long way from then. But look, 2 years is not rough. Again, would you said, so when Sark went 5-7, was 2 years rough for that? I mean, I'm just asking you, Dave Ram, was 5-7 Sark, was 2 years rough for that? And again, Sark had not good success as a head coach. We know he'd had struggles. He came in, a lot of people were down. I'm just asking, was that not, or did he improve as a coach? And are we not pretending that coaches can get better and learn more and get more and more better at what they're doing, better at talking to the refs? That's one of the things I'll criticize RT. He needs to get better rapport with the referees. That'll come with time. Text says, keep RT. The majority of people want him fired. Don't even watch basketball. Let it know no basketball. Nate says, I really want RT to work, but we can't take a step back like this. And again, there's not a huge step back right now. I know that there is. I think Texas could, you need to keep playing and get better. But again, I know it was a hard loss for Houston, and it was going to be big. There was 2 main really bad losses. West Virginia and UCF were really bad losses. Those were ones that, you really have to look back on and say, man, that's 2. But to say we're going to look at 2 really bad losses and say this program is in no state where it needs to be, I just don't like that. Dexter says, I'm an RT fan, but one guy that he should bring into the coaching staff is Brock Cunningham because we all know he'll never leave. Yeah, he'll be a graduate assistant. We know that. FYI among Buckeye fans, Bob was not a popular hire. We are not excited. I didn't figure we were that excited. I'm saying you were excited about the season and you hired Bob, and it would immediately ruin any expectations I was excited for this season. But I appreciate you. I appreciate you texting in. Jan says, Jerry J, what a clown of a GM football ops. And you're yelling, love the passion. Yeah, that was happens. Talking basketball. I'll get into it. And maybe graduate school is tough for IT. Love him. No, I look, I'm not talking, I don't want to talk bad about IT. I'm just telling you the facts that there's issues with that. That's one of the issues is he's not hitting his threes. And that was what he was brought in to do. All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back, try to get to the rest of these texts when we come back here on the Sports Complex in the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. All right. Last segment here on the Sports Complex. Before I get out of here, go home, watch Spurs versus the Magic. I'm pretty sure that's what's on TV. I got a couple TVs, so maybe we'll put on another game too. Maybe we'll put on that Baylor game and keep up with what's going on over there. Keep up with what's happening in college basketball. I know we've talked about it a lot today, but keeping up with everything in sports, it's a full-time job. It's a full-time job, I tell you. I also do a lot of other stuff here at the station, so it's a full-time job in that sense too. Appreciate everybody on the text line. We got a couple more we're going to try and get to before we get out of here. R-Dub says the RT critics need to open up their eyes. Say Dessou is still shaking off rough from injury, and Brock is way out of sorts. Yeah, Dessou I think is getting back is doing better. I think he's doing pretty close. Shedrick is definitely still dealing with injuries. The RT critics need to open up their eyes to the entire atmosphere of today's college basketball. Upsets if polls are even remotely accurate are a weekly occurrence, and we never were a hoop school to begin with. I agree with both those things. Upsets. We saw North Carolina lose to Georgia Tech last night. Big upset. They just are happening everywhere, especially on the road. But the home games you can't lose. I'm with you, guys. Those are problems. Can't lose those. Ogden is a grown-up man. No, yes, he is. I call these critics fair weather fans at best. Make me ill. I'm not. Look, I think they're fans. I think they really want to win. I'm just trying to lead them down the right road of positivity and looking forward and not trying to keep changing everything because you're going to be mad next year too, and you'll be mad the next year. And we'll coach us $800 million and fire another one and get another one. Text says the real question is who would we get? Jay Wright, I take, but that's about the only home run hire. That is hiring a 62-year-old man to rebuild your program. Go back. I mean, how long is he going to realistically coach? He's already retired once. I don't know if that's a 6, 7, 8 year hire like Rodney Terry is. Well, you hope to be. You hope to be, guys. I don't want to scare any of you guys. Hope that he is that longer hire. Texter says it's his first year. It's his first year, guys. Jeez. WAPI Parts guy says, change of pace, rewatch My All-American. The movie still makes me proud to be a Longhorn and thankful for these men and women that represented us. Hook 'em. Yes, I can tell you I've never watched it, but I do know it's a good movie there. So like that one, WPI Parts guy. He says, listening to the RT debate with the chuckle, these guys forget that you guys beat ranked teams back-to-back 2 weeks ago and you whipped my Sooners in our house. Coach is good. Big 12 is tough. Yeah, again, we did, but that doesn't matter. The wins don't matter. Only the losses matter. The wins never matter. Elite Eight? Nah, anyone could have done that. Like our next texter who says, I still says any coach could have taken that team to the last year to the Elite Eight. I know you hate that, just my opinion. I do love the show, by the way. Thank you, Dave Ram. And I think that opinion is insane. I think that's an insane opinion when you watch how much that team changed. And again, I was sidelining all those games. I was still doing stuff with the team last year. I can tell you how much that change was. And it was a brutal, huge change that came into that team when Rodney Terry took over. And then as it built, and Sir'Jabari Rice's role in that, and then Dylan Dessou and the injury and everything for them to power through and get to that Elite Eight. And if Dylan Dessou doesn't get hurt, they probably could have gone further. They could have beaten Miami with Dylan Dessou. I can say it now because who's going to prove me wrong? But there is an injury, and you have to deal with those things. It's unfortunate. But if Dylan Dessou doesn't get hurt, who knows? He could have a Final Four team. We could have been national champions. And you still would have said anyone could have won a national championship with Rodney Terry. Anyone could. Those players could have done it. By the way, if you want to go check out some players, I believe there is an Austin Spurs game tonight featuring Sir'Jabari Rice versus Greg Brown, a former Texas player. 2 Texas players going against each other. So if you're up north, you want to go check out that game. An Austin Spurs game tonight. 2 Longhorns in the building there. Go check that out. I'm going to go calm down. I'm going to take a drink of water. Calm it down. Take a break. I really appreciate you guys playing along on the text line. It's always a blast to talk to you. We'll get back into it tomorrow with more. Until then, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean. We'll see you right back here tomorrow for more yelling, I'm sure, right here on the Sports Complex.